I want to get us introed. This is a follow-up to a session we did with Azeem, who has done a really, really useful survey into cultural diversity in the marketing sector. He shared that with us back in, oh my goodness, like May or June.
Yeah, it seems like a while ago.
Yeah, but it also felt like we were probably coming out of this soon, and now it's September. Anyway, let's not dwell on that. I'm going to get you guys to introduce yourselves, and because I am aware of my bias, or increasingly aware of my bias, I've got this little app here, which means that I can't do benevolent sexism and go ladies first, Joy, and I can't pick between Azeem and Sanjay, so I'm going to spin this wheel, and the first person to introduce themselves is Azeem. Azeem, would you share who you are and what you're doing here?
Yeah, so hi everybody, my name is Azeem. I don't know what to say. I'm an in-house digital marketer. I've got lots of experience in the marketing industry. I've judged marketing awards, and I also got my own podcast called the Azeem Digital Asks Podcast. Shameless plug right there. Available on most good platforms, but if there's one that you listen to and can't find it, just let me know. Most importantly though, one of the reasons why I'm here joined by these brilliant people is that, as John mentioned, we ran this session where we talked about cultural diversity in the marketing sector a while back. It was really well received, and now we're going to talk about it a little bit more and see what has changed, if anything, since then. And I think that's a nice segue to pass on to the next person who Joyann will choose.
Ooh. Joy, apparently.
Anticipation. It was close. It was almost there. Hi, I am Joyann Boyce. I run a social media marketing agency called The Social Detail. We specialize in helping companies reach their sector and in inclusive marketing. Hence why I'm here to talk all about what inclusive marketing is, the work I do in helping brands understand how to reach different audiences and diversify their content.
Thanks, Joyann. He picks up on the fact that I always call you Joy and you always refer to yourself as Joyann in a professional setting. So I will start doing that from now on. Sanjay, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Sanjay. I head up Life Media UK. We're a video marketing agency. I guess my involvement in this is I did a LinkedIn post which did really well, where instead of me being dragged into a conversation about race, I purposely jumped into it. And now I've jumped into it, I can't seem to leave it, which is good. And yeah, I guess that's why I'm here. Cool.
Thanks everybody. Just the gang of people who are on this call. One of the things when I was talking to Sanjay about setting this up was why have we got an old white guy on this call? It feels like I don't have a right to be on this call. So I want to address that relatively early because I feel still quite, I've got shame issues anyway, right? That's why I was in anger management. The reason I'm on this call is because I believe, like the rest of the panel actually, I don't want to speak for you, but broadly speaking, this is mainly a white people problem. We need to solve it. And if I can be a conduit to get people who are only just becoming aware of the problem of institutional bias or institutional racism, if I can be the conduit and make that easy and make it a safer space, because I look a bit like you and it doesn't feel like it's some equality tick in the box that you don't really need to attend. That's why I'm here. The other reason I'm here is because, as Claire Dibben always says, look, you don't have to host everything. I do. I'm a megalomaniac in a very small, very big fish in a small pond of Bristol. It feels like sometimes I'm not even a very big fish there. So, Azeem, we were going to have you give us a quick recap of the survey, if we could. I guess if you could give us sort of 2 to 5 minutes on where we are, and then let's start talking about actually how this has affected you guys as people in the real world.
Yeah, no worries. So just for a bit of background, and for anybody that missed the previous session, part of that involved me giving the results of a survey that I ran in the latter half of 2019 and early 2020. I guess we could probably call it pre-COVID or early COVID. Essentially, I sent out a survey, all anonymous, to the marketing industry, asking them several questions about how they feel about their organizations, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about the industry in general, and then their own career progression. And most importantly, left a space open at the end for them to anonymously add comments. And that came off the back of me noticing, as John mentioned, the industry is very white and there's no getting away from it. So a couple of key headlines that came out of it, I think, yeah, Claire's put that in the chat, which is great. Have a read. So 43% of people who responded to the survey believe that their organization does not have an inclusive culture. So almost half of people think that their organization is not inclusive. 9 out of 10 people who responded believe that there's a lack of diversity in the industry. And then when asked if their workplace actively tries to address the gap between BAME and white staff, 48% said no and 10% were unsure. So there's uncertainty and just flat out refusal that their workplaces are not addressing the fact that there's a gap between BAME and white staff. I suppose the one part of the survey that really hit me the hardest and made me sort of take a deep breath in when I saw the actual results was that 62% of people who responded, so basically 6 in 10, they believe that their ethnic background has affected their career opportunities, which for me is really hard to read and see as a person of colour. And then there were a few other points which I didn't expect to see, but I did see. So, for example, half of the white females who completed the survey believe that their career progress has been better than expected. And there's a lot of work that's been done and a lot of awareness that's been raised around the gender pay gap. And there's one point in the year famously where it will trend all over social media that this is the day that now females and women are effectively working for free because they're not paid the same as men. And then most importantly, where we're speaking about black people and people of colour. So every black person in that survey said that they were unhappy in their current job. Their progress was well below their expectations, and every single one of them said that their ethnic background definitely played a part in their career progression. So that's kind of where we are now at the moment, and well, where we were and where we are now. So yeah, I don't know how you want to follow on from that, John.
Well, if I can throw in a couple of other things or ask one question, I think there was something about, and maybe you mentioned it, but I started to make notes, which I've now stopped doing because I can't listen and make notes. Did you say about 9 out of 10 people felt that they weren't paid what they were worth, or was that not part of the survey? Is that something else?
So I didn't ask specifically about pay, which I will be doing in the second part of the survey. Excuse me, the second part of the survey. So at the end of this webinar, I mentioned that I'm going to be redoing the survey this year to sort of do a 1 year on look.
Cool.
Didn't specifically ask about pay. I asked about career progress.
Right.
A lot of work isn't about pay, but it's career progress.
Yep.
And as I mentioned, 62%, 6 in 10 believed that their identity and ethnic background has affected their career opportunities. Yeah.
The other thing, and this is kind of, okay, so it's almost inclusivity 101, but Nick was on a course with the fantastic Dr. Mina Fumbo from Bristol, who is, she did a really good TED talk called Don't Touch My Hair. Is it called Don't Touch My Hair, or No, You Can't Touch My Hair?
No,
really? Say again, Joyann?
No, you can't touch my hair.
Brilliant. Also, that sounded like you were telling me. Good. That's clear. But yeah, really good. Worth looking up. But Nick was reminded of that stat that there are more men called Dave on the boards of FTSE 100 companies than there are people of colour, which is phenomenal. And it's like, oh my goodness. I mean, I know that's FTSE 100 and we've got entrepreneurs and all of that kind of stuff, but it is just such a great illustrator of how that's not right. It's not like, anyway, I'm now starting to try to explain it. I'll shut the hell up. It would be really good, and maybe it's worth starting with Sanjay on this, if that's okay, guys. If we could talk about if you've got any examples you want to share with the people on the call about how this might have affected you in daily life. Sanjay, I don't know whether it's worth you rehashing your LinkedIn rant, or whether you've got, I mean, I know you had a fresh one days after, or probably even hours after, so I'll leave it to you.
One day I'd love to create like a really cool manga version of all the hilarious and tragic racist moments in my life. So like, maybe I'll do one funny and one slightly painful. We'll start with slightly painful. So I think one thing that a lot of people who are white or not of any ethnicity, kind of like, not of any ethnicity, but you know what I mean? They don't understand that actually nearly everyone that I know who is black or minority ethnic has a racist story from as young as they can remember. And most of those people, that's one of their first memories of something or somebody being racist to them, which is a horrific fact when you think about it. However, most of us just accept it. Like, oh yeah, we've all got that one racist story when we were younger. And mine is when I remember being young enough, so we were just coming back from primary school, so I had to be like maybe 5, and it's me and my mum. We get to the front door, and my mum's like just ruffling around for her keys, and this guy cycles past, and he says, "F off, go home." And my mum turns around and just says, "You bastard." Sorry, John, I swore. My bad.
Hey, you're among friends, dude. And so's your mum.
Yeah. And then I remember that feeling as a child. And this is how, you know, as a child, it's your innocence. And I remember looking at the guy and looking at my mum thinking, we are home. We're literally home. We're just outside. And then you reflect on that, like, oh my God, someone said that to a woman and a child. Like, so that's pretty horrific. But to lighten the mood, there's been other racist stories that are slightly funny, if racism can be funny. And one of my favorite ones is when I was working in Costa and I made this guy this drink, this older chap, and I made him his drinks, and he takes his drinks and he walks off and he gets into the, like, right into the middle of the shop, and he stops and he thinks, no, I've got something I need to say. So he spins around and he walks back up to me, and I'm thinking, I've messed up his drink. I've made something wrong. And just completely serious, he just looks me dead in the eyes and he says, I just want to tell you, your English is really good. And I was like, what? And then I start like I'm so confused that I'm like, thank you. And I'm thinking in my head, like, it's the only language I know. My Punjabi is awful and embarrassing, so it has to be good. And he walks off proud as punch. Now, that's not racist in the same way it is racist in the first story, but it's super ignorant. And I think that that's something that, you know, we can talk about. And I think in the workplace, the reason we're telling these stories is because in the workplace, it's not necessarily a outright kind of EDL style racism, but it is a lack of understanding, a lack of empathy, and just, yeah, plain an outright ignorance as to other cultures and ethnicities and how that plays out. And, you know, I'll finish on this story, John. I remember when I was at a Christmas meal for this place I used to work at when I was doing my sandwich year, and the lady says to me, what university do you go to? And I said, I go to UWA. And then she said, oh, she doesn't know, that's all she knows about me, my name and that I go to. And then she says, oh, you must know Arjan. And I just said, why would I know Arjan? I study genetics. Does he study? And she was just like, no. And I was just looking at her like, why would I? But John did remind me, maybe she was really Bristolian and meant a lady called Jan that was a family member. And maybe that wasn't racist, as she knows Arjan. But it's things like that. And, you know, I could go on and on and on. But the point is like, actually, and this is why webinars like this are great, because we can have discussion. We can break down some of that ignorance. And I think, you know, I can only thank everybody that's attended today and watching after, taking that first step in just learning a bit more, because that's all it takes, you know.
Cool. Anybody else want to share anything?
Well, I don't want to spoil the podcast episode I'm going to do with Azeem, but the whole reason I have a business is kind of down to the fact I couldn't get an internship. I couldn't get into the industry, couldn't get a free gig to give someone time. And then I went to the Princess Trust. I was just like, hey, so no one wants to not pay me to work for them in marketing. I've got a psychology degree. I don't understand why.
Jesus.
They were like, oh, why don't you just start a business? I was like, all right. But it's only now hindsight. I'm just like, why could I not get an internship? Literally sending my CV out, university graduate, experience in recruitment, not marketing, but a graduate at that. They say that's all you need.
And to have experienced at recruitment, that's the fucking hardest job. I mean, other than digging holes, that's the hardest office job.
You know why I wanted to change. That was why marketing looks like it was easier. Debatable, but yeah, so the experiences, and also to like pull in on some of the stuff Sanjay said, I've been to networking events, and sometimes it would be me and Sanjay, the only people of color in the room, and I'll just look across the room and I'll be like, did he really just? And I now have, I call it my, I don't even know how to phrase it, my racist, I want to punch you smile. Where it's like, we're in a professional setting, you said something that is ridiculous. Like one guy in a networking event walks in the middle of my conversation. I'm talking to two other people in business and we're talking about, you know, how we're going to build their platforms and da. He walks straight up to me. He's just like, how do you do your hair? I was like, what? I was like, I do it myself. Ignore him. I'm like, okay, cool. And he stands there. He's like, my wife has locks. She's black. I had to just smile at him. I was like, hi, sir. What is your name? How are you? Do you want to join us? So yeah, there's so many scenarios that happens, and it affects in business and marketing on so many different levels that sometimes you just have to keep up with it. Which is why I really appreciate John being here and kind of him saying, bringing in the people who normally wouldn't be aware of these things happening, because the conversation can be difficult at times. Because it's just like, oh, you didn't know the sky is blue. We've been seeing the blue sky for 10,000 years. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Also, the thanking me. By the way, while you two are telling your stories, part of the reason I'm looking so fucking terrified is I have a lot of cognitive dissonance about my inability to be polite to people of color throughout my life. Now, because you're getting microaggressions all the time, right? That's how that works. And I know I've delivered a lot of them, not deliberately. And I look back at some of my actions where I think I'm being lovely and inclusive, and I've been a dick, just like I've talked over Sunjay. This is not working.
I was just going to ask really quickly, Azeem, have you ever had anybody that gives you a sigh of relief when they hear that you speak English?
Yeah.
Oh my word. Jesus. Right, Azeem, have you got anything you want to tag on those?
So just to follow on from what Sunjay said, one thing that I do, it's kind of a reverse. So if an Asian person comes to me and immediately starts speaking in any Asian language, that's an assumption that they've made that I can understand it and speak it. So immediately I'll just say, and then we'll have a conversation and I'll listen to them and they'll go off and talk in a different language, which I can probably understand. And I know that they're talking about me. And then if they make a joke and I laugh, collar them immediately. A quick one I can share though, a funny one and a fourth one. I'll share a funny one with you. So years ago, I was going to Florida. I was going with a white family. It was in the middle of summer. Departure lounge heaving, absolutely heaving. You cannot hear anything. Kids galore, just loud. Waiting to get on the plane. Excuse me. Guy comes over to me. And he's like, Azeem, why are you not answering me when I'm calling you out over the tannoy? And I looked at him and I was just shocked for a second, like, how does he know who I am? And I never heard him call me. So I just said to him, how do you know I'm Azeem? And he just said, look around. So I looked around and obviously I was the only non-white person there. He took me to one side, grilled me, absolutely grilled me, like, where are you going? Where are you staying? Why are you with these people, etc. At the same time, one of his colleagues had gone to the family that I was with, asked him if I'd brought them there under any duress, if I had anything in their bags. Honestly, true story. That same trip, I can't remember the name of the thing, the big tunnel that you go and get on the plane. We were on that. and we had to go down some stairs.
Airway.
Yeah, that. Halfway down, there's a table there, and there's two chaps, and they stop me and they say, "Look, we just want to check through your bag." I said, "Yeah, absolutely fine, no problem." Let them check through my bag. One of them's checking through the bag. The other guy is like, "Have you got a problem with this? Is there a problem with it?" And he just kept like sort of nudging me. He's like, "Is there a problem with this? You look like you've got an issue." And I was like, "Absolutely no issue. That's your job. Carry on." Big grin on my face. And then somebody in front of me, I always remember her face, elderly white lady. She turned around and she went, "Excuse me, that is disgusting. You're picking on this chap for no reason at all," and just started losing her rag. And I stopped her and I said, "Look, don't do that. This is what they want. They want a reaction, and they're not getting it from me, and now they're getting it from you. If you continue to smile, do what they say, and don't give them any reason to have an issue with you, that will hurt them more in the long term, and he's going to remember this for all the wrong reasons." And then he just shut the bag and went, "That's fine, off you go, enjoy your flight." And I just gave him the biggest sort of fake smile and went, "Thanks." So literally we could spend an hour, 2 hours,
Yeah.
videos talking about all the stuff that we've experienced.
It is useful, and I appreciate you doing it, because it is that sort of thing that most people like me have not experienced that, and I haven't even heard stories like that. And the other reason it's useful is hopefully now some of us will be able to, at marketing and networking events, assuming they come back, be able to recognise the "you're a racist and I want to punch you" Joyann Boyce trademark smile that Azeem apparently also delivers, which is good. We've talked about how this is affecting us in the real, or affecting you guys in the real world. We know it's affecting me because I'm an idiot who runs a marketing agency and I don't have any qualifications, and I used to be a shepherd. So, and I used to just think I was talented, but you get to like 38 and you're like that. Oh, this is privilege. Ah, gosh, I wish I'd spotted this before. I wouldn't have been such a big-headed wanker through my 20s. What we want to do is talk about how we can start to make things better, right? But this was hopefully scene-setting and useful for people who are on the call. One of the things that I thought this morning, as I was getting out of the shower, apologise for putting that mental image in your heads, but it's there now. Let's try and get around it. It was... wow, it's so hard. I was thinking about what I was going to say on something else. And I was thinking, it's so hard because to try and fit in all of this inclusive language. Joyann, you do it so beautifully all the time around everything. And then I was thinking, and then I was just reminded of exactly what you said, Joy. The sky's blue. Or Seth Godin described it as, there's two fish in the water, and they're discussing something, and then one of them suddenly goes, "Oh, we're surrounded by water," and that's why other things were drowning. And it's like, that's how systemic racism particularly is really well illustrated. And I was thinking, wow, if I now feel that just because in the last certainly 18 months my mind's been a bit more blown. Of course, I've not been a racist in inverted commas. I've certainly benefited from a racist system without challenging it. So I have been in that sense. But in the last 18 months, my world's been, my eyes have been opened a bit more. And it is that thing of, wow, if I find it that difficult, I'm only having to do it when I'm talking in professional circles, typically. People of colour are living their entire lives like this, in this water. And I just think it's so important that we hear from you guys. I shut up now because you guys need to help us understand. You don't need to, you're generous enough to help us understand how we can start to make a change. So thank you. Joy, let's talk to you, because you've been talking about inclusivity and how that could be made the standard in marketing. Talk to us a little bit about that and how we might make some changes in our work.
So kind of pulling off of what you said, a lot of this is systemic. So you need to embed change in order to make change happen. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen because someone posted a black square, all of a sudden, all your marketing content is going to be diverse and representative. No. And I'll have a side rant about Black History Month coming up soon anyway. Inclusive marketing and all that I stand for and pushing forward with it is embedding it throughout the whole marketing process. So from the moment that you're having that creative idea, or you're with that agency, or you're putting together a campaign, or you even running Facebook ads, is considering the impact from there. A lot of the research and a lot of the things I'm doing, I'm currently doing a data fellowship right now, is looking at how algorithms and the things we use as marketers have systemic racism in it and systemic bias in it. So we actively have to do things to change. And there are tools out there and tech out there that helps us do that. And I think if we can become aware of the few actions that we can take and embed it into our whole process, then it will grow and it will change over time. And then inclusive marketing won't be this whole niche sector. It won't be a, let's just do it for Black History Month, or let's just do it because it's Autism Awareness Month. Because when I'm speaking about inclusive marketing, yes, I am a Black woman. Yes, that is what you see, but I will also talk about disability. I will also talk about representation for mental health. I will also talk about language and trauma, and all of that is inclusive. And it's not charitable, because no matter what your company is, no matter who you're targeting, as long as you're targeting people, I don't know if anyone's targeting aliens, but as long as you're targeting people, those people are diverse, no matter the sector. And amazingly, I always use it as an example, when you look at campaigns around tampons, tampons should be targeted to people who have periods. People who have periods are people that present as women and trans men. Up until 2 weeks ago, no one had ever thought to target a tampon to people rather than women, and always pink as well. Fucking hell. I know I'm wearing pink today, but it's not normal. But that was inclusive, and I think it was Superdrug that did it, and they were just like, duh, you just changed one word in your copy and you've opened up your audience. You're still marketing, you're still targeting, you're still suiting a certain niche, because you're not gonna target tampons to people who no longer have periods or to people who use it for other things. You're gonna target to the people that use it. Don't know what other things, but anyways. So that's what inclusive marketing is understanding when you're doing your whole process, content creation, going forward, that's what you're thinking of, and that's what the next generation want. Gen Z that are coming up, they have TikTok. All they know is that algorithms are catered to diversity. That's all they know. TikTok is very crafty at making sure if you like a certain type of content, they will show you as many people in that area as they can. Outside of the politics of TikTok, we can get into that some other time, but that's what Gen Z does. That's what Gen Z knows, and that's what they expect. That's where they're putting their spending money. The same way you see people talking about wanting to shop ethically, that it's a slower burn because it's been happening a lot longer, but it's the same ethics of being applied to what representation does this brand have for disabled people, for women, for Black people? How is this brand treating its companies, its employees? That's the same way people are going to use their money to spend. So if you want to keep making money, you've got to have inclusive marketing embedded. Rant over. Nice.
Also, great line to end on. If you want to keep making money, you've got to have inclusive marketing embedded. You've done a blog for us, giving some ideas on that. I suspect there's plenty more on your site and various other places that we can find it if we're talking to you guys. So we'll come back at the end and get you to shout out your social channels and all of that kind of stuff, so people can follow you and you can share more stuff at the end of this. I think we should jump on to, I mean, we were talking about how do we get more young people into the sector, paid internships, and don't be racist in the interviews, because you're not even, that wasn't even because you have a name that looks Black on the CV, so you get put in the bin, Joyann. You've got a name that looks Welsh. And
people still mess it up. They call me Joanna. I really find it very odd that my name is hard to pronounce. I'm baffled. Of names out there, it's two simple names.
Yep.
And I get an extra A on the end.
I'm not Azeem Ahmad, because the H in my surname, often white people take as an invitation to clear their throats and almost die before.
Oh no! because they really want to get down with the ethnicity of it all.
Pretty much, yeah.
Gosh, I am feeling so filthy right now. I'm just like that. Oh God, white people, why? And I'm one of you, and I know I do this. Oh God. Right. Anyway, while I'm biting holes through things with my buttocks, being so terrified of all of this. Sorry, it's just I'm clenched massively by people mispronouncing Azeem's name. Should we get on to the questions? Gross, stop talking. Gross, apparently, according to Claire. Should we get on to the questions that people have sent in? Claire, do you want to start shouting them into the void?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So I've just put a link in the chat to the survey. So if you've got a question which you'd like to ask anonymously, just click on that link and you can submit questions in there or chuck them in the chat. We've had a few come through already. So I'll kick us off with, if a business currently does not have a diverse staff, does using more diverse imagery in their marketing come across more as appropriation or falseness rather than representation?
Very much, to me, depends on the use. If you're only using those images on your hire or come and work for us page, and then someone clicks and then your whole team is white or your whole team is men, then yeah. But if you're using it across your content, especially in a B2C sense, then that is showing representation because that's reflecting who you're targeting. So just having that in mind, I think one of the main things with companies that don't have diverse representation is just being very transparent on team pages. And just, so if someone does come to your page or your website and is like, hey, I see all your content, they can quickly see, okay, this is what it is, that's what they're doing. Is when you try and hide it, it can come across differently.
I think for me, the only time that would be acceptable, for want of a better word, is if they're doing that, but they're actively trying to address the lack of diversity at senior levels. So if on a Monday, they put out a statement and say, look, this is our senior level leadership team. We are 90% male and 80% white or whatever, very male, very white. If they've put out a statement to address that and they're going to talk about this yearly in the same way as they're going to talk about the gender pay gap, and then by the end of the week, start having more inclusive marketing, it's a sign, and as Joyann rightly mentioned, it's a sign that they're taking steps to make progress. You're not going to achieve progress overnight. And I said this before, I think, on the previous webinar. I think sometimes the issue that I have is that sometimes we get so frustrated about seeing things that are happening. We just want progress to be as quick, if not quicker. But you realize that this has been going on for years and probably will continue to go on for more years. But if there's a sign that progress is happening, then that's okay with me.
Sanj, do you have anything that you want to add?
I mean, they summed up pretty well. The only thing I'd say is that, you know, from a pure marketing perspective, if you had a poster which was diverse and it said, you know, could this be you? I think that's acceptable. I think sometimes it's weird when you can see a picture that's like obviously overcompensating. It's like a picture of like 4 black people shaking hands, like, you know, the really awkward stuff. And it's just like, what? This is weird. I really love BNI as an organization, but they are so bad because they've got such a reputation of it being an old white man's club that now in their marketing and in their sales presentations, it's so far the other way. It's hilarious. But, you know, for me, it's always about intention, as you know, it's already been mentioned. Intention is so crucial. One of my best friends who used to work for us, Sid, he used to go to the networking at Business West, and he was only working with us for about 6 months. He got photographed and put onto their like leaflet that got posted everywhere. And I took a picture of it and just put like token right above his head and like sent it to him. And I think we've still got a couple of copies in the office. It's brilliant. But, you know, I'm not going to knock them for doing it because they sort of like, we should do it. I get it. But yeah, it's just, you know, do it across the board. So it's not just like, I'm going to do it now because it benefits me, because I look good. Do it for the right reasons, and I think you're going to be fine.
Just a quick note on that face that's been seen everywhere. It's fading now, but my face has been seen everywhere. But I kind of set myself up. I did a whole stock photo like campaign, so
Man,
Yeah.
when you used to come to our events, or you still do, and that's lovely, but you'd come and you'd be one of the few, if not the only person of colour there, perhaps, and you're tall, so you stand out, and you could just see the photographer who was ever doing it would be like that, and I'd have to monitor them for the first, like, okay, I need to stand next to this guy for 20 minutes, and you'd just be like that. Okay, don't take all the photos of Joyann, because that's great for our inclusivity, but we probably need to ask her if we can make her the face of every event we've ever done.
Joyann is the Idris Elba of Bristol, just used everywhere.
The only one time it's been awkward is a certain conference that I have actually trolled on Twitter. I'm not going to say who it is, but they continuously use my picture from 3 years ago. And I'm like, your conference is crap. Your founder is crap.
Are you talking about Digital Gaggle, Joy?
No, I am not.
Hey,
Not.
jeepers,
A
harsh.
tech conference. That's just,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, let's, okay, let's talk about that afterwards, because we need
Shall I move on to another question that we've
No,
had?
let's slag off competitors.
So we've had a question come in around terminology. So the question is POC or BAME the preferred terminology? What about BIPOC? That seems more American, so is it appropriate in the UK? If someone wants to be genuinely sensitive, what is most widely accepted?
I will start here because that's a great question, and it's something that, as a person of colour, I am quite uneasy and uncomfortable with. So initially, when I started my survey, I referred to anybody who isn't white as BAME or BAME. And then the more that I started to research and get into this and look into both UK, US and around the world, there were different terminologies for non-white people. So as you mentioned, POC, BIPOC. And it's something that I'm still a little bit uneasy with. So you'll see that I mentioned BAME or POC. And I think I'm leaning slightly more towards POC, but there are people, rightly I should say, who think that BAME is just not the right sort of term to use, because often you'll see in news outlets and everything else, and in my previous talk with yourselves, you'll see that I mentioned it. So Oxford University blanketed the BAME phrase to mask the fact that they had more black students apply to them, and they said we had 20% more BAME students, and they used an image of a young black girl, and when you dig into the numbers, it was actually something like 3%. So I can see really how that is not an inclusive term, but for me, I'm probably leaning more towards POC or BIPOC.
Thanks, Azeem. Sorry, Joyann, go ahead.
For me, it's all about context. BAME, Black and Asian Ethnic Minority, which is not even the correct abbreviation of it, was created so the government could have a tick box to categorize and understand. What happened with that term is that the press and marketers are guilty of this, started using it everywhere without even saying. So to me, the correct way, if you're going to use BAME, you need to mention and type the words Black and Asian Ethnic Minority. It's the same with any other abbreviation. The first time you say it, you type it all out, then you abbreviate it. So that's just general abbreviation procedure. For myself, I use depending on what I'm talking about. If I'm talking about racism, I tend to say Black and brown, because within the Asian culture in itself, racism treats Asian people in different ways depending on the darkness of their skin tone. So how I say it and what I say, I try to stick it with the context, but again, going back to the basics of marketing, if you're going to be speaking to Black and brown people, people from Asian background, I'm not going to call myself, I'm not going to go into Google and say, oh, internship for BAME people. That's not natural for my language. It's something that someone else calls me. I might type, Black women in marketing, because that's how I describe myself. And I think with the terms and the terminology, it does change, and it is different contexts and depending on countries. Like people of color is a broad one, the same way that people look as feminism and Black feminism as very separate things. So thinking about who you're talking to and who the impact is going to have, then think about the terminology you use. I was going to advise using Twitter as a guide, but sometimes Twitter can take you a little bit off. just a little bit, just sometimes. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I'm again only going to echo what everyone else says. I think I probably used BAME, a while back, and then you start realizing like the reality is, as Joyann mentioned, the treatment of Black people versus the treatment of Asian people is different. I think even in the University of Bristol did the study of where they looked at SAT scores from that were marked anonymously versus the teachers' grades, and Indian and Chinese students were scored higher by teachers, and actually Black students were scored lower. So even at that level, we can see that there's a difference. And there's, I would have received a privilege over Joyann if I was in her class, but she would have beat me up because she's taller than me and doesn't need a footstool. So but BAME, yeah, it seems like that's not a fair, really like collective name, I don't think anymore. So I think people of color, I think the word colored or people of color has its own connotation. So it's probably not a perfect term either, but we're just trying to work with what we got. So, yeah.
Cool. Just to encourage people, again, if you want to chuck a question into SurveyMonkey, I've dropped that link in the chat. So do keep sending them through. Another one that we have says, I want to be able to speak up for my colleagues at work and encourage more diversity at all levels within the company. But I worry about coming across like the angry white woman who's speaking on behalf of others. How can I make sure I'm a good ally without making it all about me? So who wants to take that one first? Sanj?
Yeah. I think it's always about, before acting, it's actually about gaining a good understanding and reaching out. I'd much prefer if someone had a conversation with me and say, hey, look, just being completely transparent. There's something that someone said to you earlier and I'm not super comfortable with it. I don't know if I'm actually overreacting or like, actually, this is an issue. And I think what that does was, I'm a bad example because I'm like supremely confident. So I have a laugh with somebody. If I think someone's racist, I'm going to call it out then and there, but not everybody's like that. And I think by having a conversation where you say, I'm not sure, is that okay, really? That made me feel a bit uncomfortable. How does it make you feel? You can have a conversation with somebody where perhaps they would have let it slide, but because they know that actually they're not the only person that feels uncomfortable, somebody else did, kind of like the white woman in Azeem's story earlier, it kind of gives you the kind of confidence to be like, actually, yeah, it probably wasn't quite right. And then you can have a conversation, well, what happens next time if we do that? Or should we do something together now? And it's more of a collaborative approach. I definitely don't want somebody, I've had it before where people would have messaged me on the site to say, look, I don't think that's cool. Do you want me to say something? And I'm like, no, that's fine. I've got a relationship with that person and I know they know where the line is. I know where the line is, and we can have fun and a bit of banter. So I appreciate someone coming up to me and speaking to me and finding out and having that conversation. So it's just about reaching out and understanding, I think, first.
I would add a little bit on there in just knowing the dynamics of how things lay. Just to bring in a little story, there's John mentioned about the whole "Don't Touch My Hair" video. One of the jobs I was working in, a co-worker walked up behind me and started playing with my braids and was holding it in her hand, and it took me about 2 minutes to realize. So I then was like, oh, you're in my personal space, and she didn't understand what I meant. So I reached out and touched her glasses. She reported me for touching her glasses, and when I said that she was touching my hair, they were like, it's not the same, and I got disciplinary. So I would say when trying to stick up or defend things at work, I definitely agree what Sanjay mentioned about whoever you're trying to help or support, make sure you have a conversation with them because they may not want that added stress. There's a kind of unknown thing about when you're a person of color at work, you kind of just do your job and go home because any extra interaction normally leads to a negative response. So just bearing in mind the person may not want that weight, or they may not want to become the whole reason the company is doing something because it's not genuine that they're doing it. So I think having a conversation with them is really good.
Spot on. I think what Sanjay mentioned earlier about intention is the biggest thing. If it's coming from a genuine place of interest and wanting to learn, then absolutely no issues. I think one of the things that I was thinking of there, listening to you both talking about and telling your answers there, one of the things that I want people to take away from this webinar is that, look, and I'm going to speak for myself and not for my esteemed colleagues here, we are not the spokespeople for every person of colour. Like, I don't represent every Asian person that walks the face of the earth. I don't. These are my opinions. So often you'll hear me start sentences with, I think that, because it's my opinion, and you're welcome to challenge me on it, and let's have an actual discussion about it. If it's coming from a good place, no issues at all. I think people now, just in general, so regardless of your age, gender, any of those protected characteristics, I think now, like as in right now, people have to get uncomfortable, and you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you're not doing that, then things aren't going to change and things are not going to move. You'll see in the news now, people are getting upset about the fact that advertisements are featuring black people, or people are getting upset about the fact that there's a dance routine that's politically challenged, and I don't want to see politics on Saturday night. It's not true. It's because it's undercover racism, and people are starting to get uncomfortable with the fact that things are changing and their views are still exactly the same, and they're not moving along with the times, and they're getting left behind. A more recent example from today, I think, I'm not sure how official it is, but Sue Barker's left Question of Sport, and she's rumoured to be replaced by Alex Scott. People are going insane on Twitter. She was trending #1. What? Oh, we know why this is. And they're not actually saying anything racist, but it's what isn't said that it's the most racist, when, if anything, she's probably one of the most qualified people to have that job. She's got a background in the industry. When I watch her analysing sport, I'm listening, I'm thinking, God, she's picking up on things as a professional herself that I would never see. I'm thinking, God, she's great. I don't care about what she looks like, what her gender is. Is she the right person to talk about that? Yes. Overall point is, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and move with the times. Otherwise,
Can I just quickly add to that point? That is why when Nadia Hussain won the Great British Bake Off, it was one of the proudest moments for all people of colour, because it was the weirdest setup. Like, Great British Bake. Do you know how infuriated people were? She can't win the British Bake Off. I loved it. It was amazing. I didn't even watch that, but it's amazing.
Dear. That's delightful.
Okay, so we've got time for a couple more questions, so I'll just take a few more. Joyann, I think this could be one for you actually. Says, working in an agency, how can we try and educate or change our clients' views on inclusive marketing? So starting the conversation often makes them uncomfortable. Are there softer ways or resources that we can share that make them give a fuck? Personas, target buyers, imagery, messaging, or are uncomfortable conversations just the right thing?
Money. That's kind of a standard box answer. Black and Asian spending power in the UK is 300 million. That's more than the LGBT community, which always surprises people. And by the way, there are LGBT people who are Black and brown. Yay! I had to say that one time when I said that fact to someone. They're like, no, Black and brown people can't spend that much. It's not possible. So I always say, start with what your client's interested in. They're interested in results, they're interested in goals. Inclusive marketing is not charity. It's not, we're going to do it for the fun of it. You're still trying to achieve a goal, and you're trying to do that wider. So I think if a client is coming back and they will directly have to say to you, oh, I've actually heard someone say that to a client said, we don't think that campaign's going to sell because there's a Black woman in it. And if they say that to you, don't push it. You've got your evidence, you've got your values as an agency, you know who you're working with. But if you're presenting someone with facts and you're saying, here is a range of campaign, let's say for a luxury handbag, we're going to present these 5 different models, they're all of different shapes and sizes, and they come back and you're just like, here's the demographics on the reach on that. Here's how a campaign with a plus size model did last year and what the return on investment was. If they come back and they don't want the money, they don't want the money. I'm not going to fight nobody on that. Sorry.
Brilliant. Sanjay, Azeem, do you guys want to add anything on to that?
if
That was a great response, wasn't it? Yeah, boom. Cool. So another question says, look at the boards / management teams of Bristol Innovation Incubation Hub. So Engine Shared, Set Squared, Bristol Media, all totally white. What can we do to change this? Joy, looks like you.
Can I just make a quick apology? When the guy sent me that question anonymously, I said I'd edit out those names. Anyway, so apologies to Bristol Media, Engine Shed, Set Square.
Bristol is a small city, eh?
Yeah, but it's funny. The other point was that we're always going on about how flipping great and inclusive we are. And then you lift your eyes a little bit and go, not at this level.
Yeah,
sorry, shut up, John.
language that we speak, and we've got all these shops that seem to be split in one half of the city and the other half, no, not so. I have to be so diplomatic with this answer. It's hilarious. Sanjay, how would you diversify BNI? Let's go that direction.
Well, before I give my answer, I know Azeem was about to say something, so.
Being not from Bristol, I can be safe. I was just going to say, my thing that I always sort of hammer home is that every company, regardless of whether you've got 3, 30, 300, 3,000, should release every year their diversity gap in the same way they talk about gender gap. And that's the best way, I think, to do it. If there's better ways, by all means, shout at me and say, look, I think we could do it this way. But every year, you don't have to release names, but just say, this is our board, this is how we're made up, these are our percentages, this is what we're going to do. And if you go back 1 year, say why. If you increase, say why. But every year, release that information. Simple as that. It's dead easy.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to just talk about, firstly, being aware of that problem, because it's obviously a problem. I didn't even think about it. So that's awareness, and doing a strategy, like Azeem just said, I think would bring awareness to everybody, and then an acceptance that you've got a problem, then we can start working on it. The problem with this type of problem is that because people don't know about it, it's just like, well, don't worry about it. We don't think about those things, so then no action takes place. But if we're forced, like Azeem said, to actually, you have to release that information, or suddenly, that which gets measured changes, right? And we're not measuring it in the first place.
So yeah, we're moving it away from the first aspect. I just dropped the link for Buffer, which is a scheduling app. They have their diversity board published. Buffer has gone with transparency from the core. You can see how much their salaries are. As a company, they still get dragged on Twitter for their treatment of Black and brown people in their workplace, but they publish this every year, and you can see live updates. And you can even see on there, when you go to C-suite, it is all white men. So I think that what doesn't get measured doesn't change. And I think that's something that we can definitely implement across the board, stepping away from treating diversity as charity.
If I can jump in, one of the things that really helps, privileged people in my position is just to broaden your network. Like, you're linked into all of these people. Like, people like me are linked into bald white guys. They follow bald white guys on Twitter, and all of their mates are bald white guys, apart from most bald white guys' wives, because they're all in traditional standard relationships. And if you're in a position of privilege, and now, I only work in a company of 10 people, but it's still a position of privilege because we have a louder than usual voice. Just change who you follow on Twitter. Go follow Sanj, Joy, and Azeem, and then follow some of the people they follow. Do the same on LinkedIn, because you'll just start to hear different voices. And if you start to hear those different voices, you won't be that person. We had someone we were talking to about a webinar a little while ago, and we said, look, we're really trying to be inclusive in our panels, and everybody you've suggested to join us on this webinar is white. And they're like that, well, we don't know any people of color. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What country are you living in? Like pre-war Germany? What the fuck? Anyway, so that's me probably never talking at their webinar.
On that note.
Sorry, Joy.
Sorry, Joyann, before you finish, we're just coming up to 4 o'clock, so just wanted to make sure that we're all conscious of that. Carry on, Joy.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, John, always find a way to leave me speechless. If following other people, follow them and engage. Basic social media rules. You're not stalking people here. You know, they're not random weirdos. They're in your sector. I'm not telling you to go follow Cardi B, even though content value. Follow someone in your industry. There are, for whatever sector you're in, I guarantee you, there is a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, or a Twitter account that's campaigning for diversity in that sector. And if you can find those people campaigning and support what they're doing, even if you're not gonna like follow someone individually, there's always someone, like there's Ladies Who SEO, there's BME PR pros for marketing. There's always a group campaigning for diversity, so you can engage with them and interact with them as well.
It's 4 o'clock. Have we fixed systemic racism in the marketing sector?
Yes, I believe so.
Well, the two white people on the call are congratulating themselves. I think that's the status quo remains. Look, I think we've probably got loads more questions.
We've had loads more questions.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
Why didn't you send them earlier, guys?
Yeah, we've had loads of questions come through. So thanks everyone for putting them in the chat. What we'll do tomorrow is we'll upload this recording to Wistia and we'll transcribe the video and I'll circulate that in an email so that if you want to share it with your colleagues or friends, you can do so. And also include the resources that we discussed with links and also social contact details for you guys so that if people want to add you to the networks, they can.
Definitely listen to the Azeem Digital podcast. Even if you don't like the content, he doesn't like his voice, this man, and I don't know why. It's just like putting on a lovely warm coat listening to that podcast.
Because people wouldn't have me on their podcast, bastards. That's the only time
That's beautiful. We've been asked by one person, and I suspect there'll be more. Shall we do a part 3? And we could just do much more Q&A if you guys were up for it. So we'll reach out and check that this wasn't a horrific experience and see whether or not we can do another one. It might end up being early in the new year. The other thing about this is Claire Dibbs has worked really hard to set this up and make sure that I am not a typical old white man, and she never gets props. Thank you, people, for giving her props there. But more than that, we know that we are not performing well enough when we're looking at the LGBTQA plus community, and when we're looking at or talking about how we can work with disabled people. So we're going to try and do more of that stuff. We need to keep the doors open and make some money, but we promise to spend the money on doing shit like this. So that's where we are. Thank you ever so much for coming along, everybody. Particularly, though, thank you to Sunjay, Azeem and Joyann for being so honest and lovely.
Thank
we'll
you very
see
much
you. Yeah, thank you.